The Office on NBC is a popular comedy familiar to anyone with a television or the 54 people with access to Amazon Unbox. The show's about real life in an office, but behind the fun and attractive world depicted by the likable cast, there is a shadow world lived by grubby, nearsighted writers in the actual offices inside the Dunder Mifflin building. Welcome to the Writer's Block, a round table with the writers of The Office. Before we take questions from the room, we want to show you where many of the scenes that appeared on the show come from. Our own workdays. One day, Greg caught us watching the DVD screensaver instead of coming up with new ideas. Luckily, we managed to convince him that we were working, and then we had to put it in the show. Being very athletic, we writers often toss around the old pigskin. It's a great way to brainstorm crazy new creative bits for the show. One day, we realized that Justin Spitzer is a drunk. While tragic, we tried to make comedy out of it. Yes, over the years, we have used many of the real things that go on around our offices to make comedy for The Office. And who am I, you may be asking? Well, my name is Brent Forrester, and my story was the basis for Ed Truck's accident in grief counseling. For you see, at the beginning of season 3, I was decapitated in a car accident.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the writers of The Office. Well, I think a good way to start, if you guys could introduce yourselves and also maybe say an episode that you're proud of writing, proud to be involved in writing. Give the people out here, I know a lot of them know exactly who you are, but give those that don't a good sense of how much you've contributed to The Office.
I'm Greg Daniels. I'm proud of writing Blue's Clues.
And I am proud of writing The Secret.
I'm Mike Shore. I'm most proud of rewriting The Secret.
I'm Justin Spitzer. I wrote Back from Vacation.
I'm Ryan Coe. I'm new, and I'm proud to one day maybe get to write an episode.
I'm Bonetsky, and I'm proud of helping Mike rewrite V on Secret.
I'm Jason Kessler, and I'm proud of Creed Thoughts.
I'm Minnie Kaling, and I'm proud of my first episode, Hot Girl.
I'm BJ Novak. I'm proud of writing Diversity Day.
I'm Leslie Lewis. I'm proud of playing the role of Ryan on The Office. I also wrote an episode called Deposition that will be coming up soon, so. I'm Anthony Farrell, and the coolest thing I've written so far is that Kevin talking ahead with the PB&J thing.
I'm Ken Sabornak. I produce all this guy's crap.
We're going to get started with a few fan questions submitted on the internet, and then we'll sort of feel free to improvise here a little bit. First question comes from Kristen in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I'm not sure about this. It seems as though you have established an ideal work environment from which to create. To what do you attribute the collaborative nature between the writers, cast, and crew?
The process by which we make the show is incredibly organic and very grassrootsy. And as you all probably know, a lot of our writers are actors, and a lot of our actors are writers. And that was Greg's conception of the show from the beginning. Was some shows out in Hollywood land, there's a very weird division between actors and writers, and you don't get to interact much with actors if you're a writer, and obviously vice versa. And the whole point of the show is to sort of break down those barriers. And when you write an episode, you're on the set for every minute of the shooting of it, and you work really closely with the directors, and we have, over the years, developed a real kind of fun shorthand between the actors and the writers and the directors, and it's just a very relaxed environment, and I think that that really helps us because there's no sense of weirdness or something. If the actor has a question, they just come to us, and if we want to let the actors improvise and try to improve the dumb stuff that we've written, then we do that too, and it just is a very calm and relaxed sort of big happy commune that we work on.
And a lot of respect, and we respect each other so much. Like we know we bring
some of us respect some other people.
We bring stuff down and we know they're just going to make it better. So
yeah.
it's nice.
I have a follow-up to that. Am I correct in saying that one writer leads up an episode and then sort of other writers help with the editing? Is that typical of a television show creating a comedy, or is that atypical?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, one of the writers is sort of, we all pitch all the ideas out, and we work really hard sort of making an outline, and then one writer goes off and writes the original draft, and then once you write it, it becomes the property of the staff again, and we all rewrite it, but the person who's sort of the point person is on it from day one, and is on the set, and is in editing and stuff. And then, you edit it, and you get it exactly the way that you think is best, and then Greg comes down and points out why what you did was stupid and terrible, and then he fixes it and makes it good.
Another fan question, this is for Greg. Do you think at some point you'll have to explain why this fictional camera crew is now in its 4th year of filming this documentary? Can you ignore that indefinitely?
I think yes. There's a lot of stories from the world of documentaries taking years and years to film. I think Hoop Dreams took 6 years to film or something like that, and there's others that take even longer. And I think it's typical with documentaries that they don't necessarily have big budgets, but they invest years into a project. So whether that's actually true or not is what I'm going to believe.
As the show has progressed, the office workers seem to have developed a relationship with the documentary crew. Is this growth a conscious choice made by the writers? This is from Jessica in Columbus, Ohio.
Jen should answer that.
Yeah, occasionally we'll do an episode that kind of focuses, there's an episode that I wrote where Pam was interacting with the cameras, trying to find out if Dwight and Angela were together. And the cameras got involved, and we had a lot of fun with that. We don't do that often, but it's fun when we get to do that. Randall, one of our cameramen, he had a direction of he's really excited to show her something, and he kind of ran up to her desk instead of just the normal, kind of zooming in or going. So the camera was bouncing, and he waited there to try and get her attention. And when she looked up, he pointed out something. So we don't do that very often, but I think it's really fun.
Randall is also our DP and a director of many episodes, and he's like the hidden member of the cast, he and Matt, because when they look around, you get a sense of who the cameraman is.
How much of the show is improvised? You guys must get that question a lot. Can you put that to rest here today?
We encourage a lot of improvisation, and once we kind of get it scripted, then we'll throw out lines to the actors, and then they'll start playing with it, and we'll get other things from that.
Well, what's interesting is that when people improvise, there's comedy and there's story when you have an episode, and most often, and 100% of the time, actually, actors will improvise in comedy. But then when you have to edit it, you don't have Steve's not usually the reason I did this was because you don't have a lot of improvisation on story. So even though it's hilarious, a lot of times it's cut out.
I'll also say I believe that the fact that the actors know that there is improvisation coming up helps the scenes feel real. Because if there was a large gap between how you felt delivering the scripted line and how relaxed and natural you felt when improvising a line, we'd be able to tell that something was off in the way things were written or the way things were being performed. So I think that as a part of the process actually helps the entire show and the scripted lines feel improvised as well.
And actually, with us being on set, the writer, whoever wrote the first draft is on set, the actors are really cool about, pretty much doing the lines and then saying, hey, I had an idea for this, I had an idea for that. And, can I try it? And it usually works out great. So it's that kind of relationship.
It goes back to, like, they start with the lines as written, then they improvise a version of them, and then often they look back at the original lines with a new understanding of them from improvising it, and they end up doing the lines as written, but more naturally.
What are some of the obstacles the writing staff faced when dealing with producing these 4 one-hour-long episodes to open the season? This is from Charlotte in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
There are many of them. One of them was that they couldn't just be hour-long episodes. They had to be episodes that, when they are shown in repeats, they could be broken up neatly into 2 half-hour parts, which was very difficult. It was very hard to construct stories that would arc over 2 episodes, but individually could work as just 1 episode.
Like the end of the first episode had to feel like an end of the first episode,
right.
But also it had to be like, wait, there's more.
I would say the biggest thing, though, is that the way that we shoot the show is that we shoot way more stuff than we need, way more stuff than we need, which is why there's so many deleted scenes on the internet and stuff, and for every 21 minute and 30-second show that normally airs, our first editor's assembly is 35 or 38 minutes long. And I think if the show is good, it's because we keep cutting it down until it's like a finely honed little comedy nugget. And when the show was an hour long, which meant it had to be 42 minutes long, we ended up with editor's assemblies that were 70 minutes long. They were essentially movies. And it's just more than twice as hard to edit and fix and hone something that's 70 minutes long into something that's 42 minutes long, So.
It was hard, I think, on everyone. I mean, I think we really enjoyed it, but it was, instead of taking 10 days to shoot it, we did it in 8 days, so it was just...
it was like an obstacle course.
It was
like a crazy obstacle course.
Fun and interesting and challenging, but a lot of work.
We got a couple more fan questions here. This is Melissa in McDonald, Ohio. It's from Michael Schur. I love you as Mo Schrute. What's it like being both a writer and actor on this?
I'm certainly not an actor. Whatever you think of me. It's a lot of fun. It's a little odd because the other writer actors on the show, Paul and Mindy and DJ, are playing. Less BJ than Paul and Mindy, but are playing essentially exaggerated versions of their natural selves. And in my case,
it's exactly the same as Mike.
The only thing I have in common with Moe's is that in real life I am an Amish beet farmer. But so I have to work a little harder.
How long does it take to glue on the beard? Is that
Well, for the record, I want this out there, people. The first time I played Moe's, the beard was real. It was honest to God, and it took me 3.5 months to grow it. My wife left me, and it happened in part because my natural beard growth is very weird and Amish looking. And some of the other people up here thought that it might be funny to force me to grow it for 3.5 months. And I came back, I made one contract demand when I came back as Moe's, which was that I would not actually grow the beard. And so the last time it was a glue on. It looked okay, right? It looked fine. I pretty much could have totally gotten away with gluing it on the first time, I think.
So somewhere at NBC, there's just a creative, prosthetic Moe's beard?
Yes. Well, it's actually right now it's in the Smithsonian, but it'll be back in a couple months.
Thanks a lot. So we have another one. This one is for BJ or Mindy. It's from Sarah Pugh in 44th. It's a local PA town here. What are your producing responsibilities on the show?
Producer, I think, means super duper way to go writer. I think in our case, the writers have all been given by Greg a lot of opportunity for input. Greg solicits opinions from his inner circle, and I would call the writers. Actually, the inner circle in the show is pretty large. There's a lot of creative input, but. Well, to answer your question on a technical level, I think producer is often simply a title that is just given to writers after a certain amount of time, but it reflects a reality that in television more than in films, writers are the ones making a lot of key decisions, influencing things on the set, dealing with the actors and directors to a large extent. So I think that we all do that, all the writer-producers, but I think all the writers who are not credited as producers more or less do that too on our show.
And so that gets more into like what you were saying, where you'll have the person who wrote the first draft of the episode on set kind of making decisions in there and helping out.
Yeah, generally that person who writes the first draft, who is the writer of the episode, is the point person on set during that script and interacts with the director and often interacts with the actors through the director, you know.
I think one of the kind of terrifying things about when you are a producer is that when you're a younger writer, you're then, the way that our staff is so big now that we oftentimes have to split up and you have someone run the room, and that means they sit at the computer while other writers are around you, and you're the one that kind of decides the order that things are written down or what maybe is on story and what isn't. And that's a really kind of scary, powerful position. And as a producer, I feel like you're more often than not asked to do that, which is like terrifying for me.
Paul Lieberstein is often the one at the computer, and Mindy actually wrote a song about what it's like when Paul is at the computer. Will you sing that?
Okay, well this is going to just make me sound mean, but like when Greg or Jen say run the room, they're fast typers, they're good spellers, and it's fine because you're all watching
Paul
it
is
on the monitor.
brilliant, but the song is justified.
And so Paul, like, he hunts and pecks, he misspells things, oftentimes his hand will slip and we're like all of a sudden in an Excel document. And like, we're all like watching it, and oftentimes he'll just start going to YouTube because someone forwarded him like a cat mauling something. And we're all like, Paul, we're supposed to be watching this. And as you know, Paul is like, on the show, Toby's characteristic is that he's infuriatingly slow sometimes to Michael.
You feel like Michael when Paul's
You feel like Michael. And so one time when we were doing a rewrite really late and Paul was at the computer, I wrote a song, which we all know, so we can all sing it, which is, Paul is at the computer, everybody blow your brains out.
Back to your question about
I'm sure he appreciates that out here.
Yeah, it's good that he's not here. Also, one of the last thing I'll say about being a producer is that when I was a staff writer, you sort of have a sense of like, oh my god, I'm going to get fired, oh my god, I'm no good, I can't believe I have this job, I've scanned the system. But you're just like generating jokes. You're considered just to be like a joke machine. But as a producer, you can kind of say things like, I'm a joke machine. Also, I don't think that character would do that. And you get to be like that kind of guy, which is more fun. You get to have like a little bit more investment, and so you're allowed to have more opinions about larger things. But not as many opinions as like a co-EP or EP, let's say.
Anytime you see a really weird name on the show, it's probably Mike.
Mike comes up with the craziest names, and I don't know if anyone, I think this made the final cut, but somebody was named Gwendolyn Trundlebed, and Mike named that. And her little...
Also, Mike's responsible for Toby Flenderson. Yeah.
Crazy. It's like if Paul's thing is that he's terrible at the computer, Mike's thing is that he's like a very funny, very brilliant comedy writer. If you have any name thing, he goes into like nonsense land. What's the joke that if you would be nothing happier would be if you had like a Swedish phone book?
Yeah. That was what Paul said he was going to get me for my birthday, was a Swedish phone book. Every name I come up with is like Gern Grundleman and Larsmanson and stuff.
As a matter of fact, in the episode that we just did, there's a scene in the deposition where they're reading off the names of the people in the room, and the last two names are Ted Grundleman and Toby Flenderson. We thank Mike for that.
It's the proudest moment of my life. In this one episode that we did, The Return, when Dwight was had quit the job and was looking around for other jobs and stuff, he was interviewing with a bunch of people, and it was just very short scenes, and the people didn't have names or they didn't even have lines. And so it was very late at night, and I wrote in that the woman's name that he was interviewing with was named Gwendolyn Trundlebed for no reason. And then our set designers, who were fantastic, saw that this woman's name was Gwendolyn Trundlebed and thought that we were trying to say something about her character. And she literally was an extra. She just sat there and stared at Dwight. And they designed her office in this incredibly like elaborate, girly way. Like she was like really into fairies and this, like, very ethereal. The whole office was pink. And we got to the set and it was like, what is happening? And then I was like, it's going to the trauma bed, you know? It's just kind of an interesting office. That did not deter me, however, from creating 20,000 other stupid names.
We've been playing with Nerf guns in the office, and I put a Nerf gun to Mike's head the other day and said, I will shoot you if you don't give me a normal boy's name, because we were trying to name something, and he couldn't. Couldn't do it.
Quick show of hands. No, actually just make some noise. Who here is from Scranton? Oh boy. Maybe you can see where we're going with this, Greg.
Who here is not from Scranton? I'm ready for your question now.
I take it everyone is here in here is familiar with the Lazy Scranton video? I think we want to know who's behind the Lazy Scranton video.
Brent wrote the episode. I think that was me telling him to put it in because we talked about this is the you have to kind of compete to be cool a little bit in the office in the writers' room, which is hard for me because I'm old and dorky, and so I got all excited about Lazy Monday that I saw somewhere. It's like, hey, do you see this? Somebody sent me a link to Lazy Monday, and they were like, oh, this is horrible, this is stupid. Redo of Lazy Sunday, that's the cool one. And then I started researching it, and everybody had done some version of Lazy Sunday. There was Lazy Snellville, Georgia. There was Lazy Ramadi, some soldiers did in Iraq. And everybody did a version of it, and I thought it would be funny if Michael did one really late. Right? I think that's how it came about. And then Brent wrote it and you know, supervised it and produced it and everything. You know what we've really gotten a lot out of, which is funny, is the Chamber of Commerce sent us a deck of playing cards, 52 playing cards, and the back of each one of them was a different Scranton location. And that's how we've come up with almost all of the Scranton locations. Especially for the Lazy Sunday, because there was Montage Mountain, and there was the Electric City sign, and all different things were on the back of this deck of playing cards.
There was a half a day where the deck was lost, and there was like a code red in the office.
Why was Scranton chosen in the first place?
You know, people ask me that all the time. And, there's a whole bunch of different reasons. I was reading John O'Hara stories at the time of the pilot, who's a great writer and sets a lot of his stuff here. A little smattering of applause. Paper Magic is a paper company that does children's Valentines. And it says Made in Scranton on the back of Scooby-Doo Valentines that I had gotten around the same time for my kids. There's a lot of different things. I think it was still maybe floating around when John Krasinski came here before the show when he was coming out for the pilot. Maybe not, but he came here with some buddies of his and shot the footage that's in our opening title sequence, and he interviewed different Scranton paper personalities, like a Pen Paper and Paper Magic, and the behavior of him going around with a camera crew asking the managers of these paper companies to show him around. It mimicked exactly what we were going for, kind of. And so we were like, yeah, that's a thumbs up. That works. And this is 100 little things. And I'm really glad I did, though. I don't think we've gotten this reception in Utica.
Can you just give us a little bit of insight on just how you got involved in the business?
I just wanted to say, in terms of education, Anthony and I are going to be starting a master's program in comedy writing. It's going to cost $200,000 a year. So we're accepting applications now. It is not accredited.
Does anybody else want to give any more insight?
One thing I've been kind of recommending lately to people who want to kind of get in is doing improv classes. Because I feel like you have to be on your feet, you have to pitch something. If it's funny, great. If it's not funny, you can't just kind of melt down and disappear. You have to pitch another thing. And so I think it builds confidence. So if it's something they're interested in doing, I would recommend something like that.
Another way to do it is the way Gene Stupnitsky did it, which was he was Larry David's nanny. Not kidding.
Not Larry David. Harold Ramis.
Oh, Harold Ramis. He was Harold Ramis.
Although I did babysit Larry's kids once in a while. But that was more for Harold.
This is honestly not true. That's how we got into show business. Yeah.
I didn't really want to go into show business. I wanted to be a nanny.
I'll say on a creative level, I think it's important to write for an audience. If you want to be a comedy writer, that's important to develop, not simply to write essays for an assignment or follow a book, to develop a voice that actually honestly entertains your friends or readers of your school paper or magazine or people on the internet. You learn a lot from an audience, and we have learned that simply from screening cuts of the show again and again to people we know and you know, people within the staff. And definitely from stand-up, there's a saying that I was taught when I started doing stand-up, which is never blame the crowd. And often it makes sense to lay a little blame on the crowd, but it's better for you to develop if you always think, well, what could I have done better? What was lame in my act? What could have been more novel and more creative? If you develop that for your friends and in a way that they would enjoy reading what you write or watching what you do, that can really get you to a higher level creatively, and often that will be discovered. And there's many books and people that can give you advice on the business side, but getting somewhere creatively is an important business side of it too.
And also, you know, if you really want to do this, you got to basically move to LA and do it. You know, you can't be in you know, the middle of the country somewhere writing your scripts, hoping someday you're going to be a writer. You have to, except for some of us who start off in New York, like sure wrote for Saturday Night Live, but you kind of have to come to LA and grind it out and write sample scripts and hustle, and it's hard. It's really, really hard to break in, so you have to be fully committed to it.
But if you're very good, you can break in. That's the one thing that I think that it's always makes people, I think most writers don't feel great about encouraging people who want to be writers, because you know how many people try and aren't able to do it. But on the other hand, as somebody who hires writers, anytime I see a script that's really A+, great. You know, Justin Spitzer was the best script of the year that I was reading scripts, and he had gotten hired on another show, and I had him in the back of my head, and it was this one Scrubs episode that he did. And Lee and Jean had a pilot that was incredibly brilliant, and you know, if you can get it up to the level where it's the best script out of the stack of 100 scripts that somebody's reading, you will definitely get hired. But that's a very hard thing to do, and it's half comedy, and it's also half understanding playwriting, and you know, just the dynamics of what makes an interesting character and how long a story should last and when you should cut to a subplot. And there's a lot of elements in it that aren't comedic too. And my personal way of getting better at it, I think it's really, sounds so simple, but I think it's really good if you want to improve your writing, to take a show that you like, put it on a pause, like on a tape or a DVR or something, and transcribe it from your looking at it. And I don't know why, but I think that helps a lot. I haven't ever heard anybody suggest that because it's so time consuming.
You know, when I wrote my first scripts, I was watching, I think Frasier was the first scripts I tried writing, and I would watch them, and I started so geeky. I would write down how many jokes were in every scene, and what the joke formulas were. I mean, it seems like it was so hacky. And I tried to fake my way, pretend I was writing a script by copying as many of the structures. And then eventually you change enough, and all of a sudden it's a completely different script, and you kind of know how to do it. You do that one or two more times, and all of a sudden it becomes secondhand.
I think another thing is just plan on just throwing a bunch of stuff in the garbage really early. Like when I first got out of college, I was like, okay, well, first I'm going to write the greatest Malcolm spec ever written. And so you just like eat yourself up with this, and then after I burned myself out and worked in advertising and then hated that, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to throw out the first three things I write. They're going to be garbage. And yeah, I followed through on that. And then, you know, actual good things maybe start coming out of the computer. But to say, like, the first time out I'm going to, you know, write the best Mad About You spec ever is probably unrealistic. But once you get over that, you can start feeling like stuff comes out of your computer quicker.
As you get deeper, now that you're here and you've been driving around and seeing things, is there any chance maybe in some of your minds to maybe make the show a little more Scranton? Have you seen some things that have maybe surprised you, that have maybe been inspirational to be like, you know what, we need to get that in the show pretty soon?
I'd say that's what you guys were all in different cars driving around. What did you guys think was story generating?
We took the coal mine tour. And it was very interesting, and we were thinking of trying to think of stories and stuff that we could do, and then slowly over the course of the tour, the mind-numbingly horrifying conditions under which the coal miners had to work in the tour, pushed the thought of comedy so far out of our brains that we couldn't focus anymore. But no, we've done a lot of things I think we're going to at least try to work in somehow. There's a very sad problem, just fact of life, which is that we shoot the show in a miserable industrial complex in Van Nuys, California, and it just doesn't look anything like Scranton. As we were driving around, and we knew that a lot of us grew up in the Northeast and everything, so we sort of knew that intuitively. But it makes me a little bit sad that we just can't replicate the look and the feel of the town as much as we would like, I think, because we live in a desert with a lot of abandoned warehouses.
My question is for any of the writers, what kind of leeway do you have on the characters' backstories? I mean, do you have a Bible that you just have a set of facts, or can you be creative?
Jason, when you were a writer's assistant, did you keep some sort of Bible?
I did. There is a Bible. We don't really have it handy so much anymore, but there's just kind of a listing of all kinds of facts, anything that's appeared in the show. Any kind of research kind of goes into there, so there's a Bible.
You know what's really weird is that we generate more ideas by a factor of 10 than we ever use, and so some of these pitches, what we call it, when the writers throw out a suggestion in the room, you kind of fall into the back of your head, and you don't remember whether or not that was ever written, if it was written, whether it was shot, if it was shot, whether it aired, if it aired, whether it aired on TV or online. So you can get confused, and what happens is it just floats around until you have to make a decision, and it just becomes possibilities. And it could be like for example, characters' religions. That floats around. And if you had a great story idea that Pam needed to be Catholic or something like that, now we can't do it because she's been established as Presbyterian. So every time you make a decision, you kind of limit things. So it's best to kind of keep it open as much as possible so you don't paint yourself into a corner and cut off a good story. So the backstory is kind of like Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It's kind of this is good, I'm going to keep going with this.
Well, sometimes we'll make these jokes that you just pitch as a joke, and then they have these enormous stakes that you don't think about till later. For instance, the Kelly Kapoor character has a sister who died, and that was a talking head that I think Jean and Lee wrote, which is now part of her backstory, that she's this horrible tragedy, but because she's not real, we think it's funny, so we wrote the joke. But that's part of her story. And there's another thing which I think is so funny, which is in Conflict Resolution, our second season. They go around and there's a note in the performance review. There's a note that was stuck in the box from a character named Tom. Tom said, "I wish there was more outreach for people with depression." And Michael's like, "What is this?" And then he's like, "Who's Tom?" And then Phyllis goes, "Tom, So essentially what happened is a person who worked in that office, which is only 14 people or so, was incredibly depressed, killed himself, shot himself in the head, if we were to take what Phyllis said at face value. And it happened, asked for help, put a note in a box, and that happened a year ago, because Phyllis was a year ago. So if you time out the series, what we discovered was that his suicide happened a day before the pilot aired. Or they came in to tape the pilot, so in our pilot episode, when Michael is bringing around the temp and saying, "This is this person, this is this person," we all just came back from the funeral of Tom. He kind of killed himself. So these jokes have verifications we don't even think about. So
That guy was much more affected by the death of Sprinkles than he was by the death of
It never occurred to me that Ryan was probably there as a temp to replace Tom.
You could also maybe wonder if the documentary crew was sent there in response.
And they're going to investigate the tragedy.
What made a man do this?
And then they were like, "Oh, this boss is kind of funny. Let's just follow this guy." Who cares? Tom who?
But just stay to see who's next.
Go ahead, talk. Got one for, I don't know if it's for BJ or about BJ, but here we go.
Why did you decide to make Ryan such a butt this year?
Well, obviously it was juiciest if Ryan changed as much as possible, and or at least revealed himself as much as possible. The beard was a part of that. I had written into the initiation script that Mose appears with his beard. I then read Mike Scherr's draft of Under Mifflin Infinity that described Ryan with a goatee, which I was not looking forward to wearing the whole year. Greg looked at my beard that was about to become a goatee and said, I don't know if you would wear that. I think goatees aren't really cool right now. Right next to me were Leslie Lewis and Anthony, who then began growing his goatee into a beard, Anthony, after I heard that comment. I didn't know that was by chance.
I cried and then I started growing my beard.
But I think it's just juiciest to have contrast in the show always, and that's why someone who was a temp and now the boss and has this weird psychosexual hints of well, I'm pinning myself to the point here.
Psychosexual, did you say?
I think that's more how it's interpreted than how it actually originates. But why is Ryan such a butt? To get back to that. I think, personally, as the actor who plays Ryan, I think that he is insecure and not used to his power and tells himself and other people that he is in this great position of authority and tries to compensate by acting like it. And I've also seen a lot of people act in these ways, say these things. I have been criticized for spending too much time on my BlackBerry when I could be interacting with other people and pitching jokes. So I think, maybe some of it was based on observation in the writer's room. And some of it is just, I think, the juiciest way to play a character who in some ways has to replace Jan as an antagonist for Michael.
It's also, just to add, I mean, one of the things I think we sort of delight in the way BJ's playing the role and the way we get to write the role is that he's really Hollywood. He's definitely could be an agent at an agency, like a talent agent or something, and so I think we also get to have a little bit of fun. It might be a bit of an inside joke, but we get to take little stabs at lampooning our own business with this sort of just silliness of it and the self-importance of it.
Hi, my name is Dan. I'm kind of big into film and video editing, so I was curious, what role in writing does post-production have, just in general?
It's really big, and there could be other panels that would be very interesting with Randall and his team and with the post guys. They're a lot of fun. I blog with Dave Rogers, who's one of our editors. We have two editors who just won the Emmy for their editing on the show. And they in Holland. And because we shoot so much, there's no way that we could keep our jobs as writers and look at every take, or certainly I can't. And so there's enormous reliance on the editor's taste to go through all the different versions and the improvs and everything and select what they consider to be the best takes. And then they put the show together. And usually when we get in the editing room, it's like, all right, maybe we don't need this scene. But there is an enormous amount of take swapping. So their taste is huge at selecting of all the work the actors do, all the 60 hours that they shoot a week or whatever more, right? Because there's two cameras running. There's enormous amounts of tape that they have to watch, and then they select all the best performances out of that. And it's a huge, huge and important job.
Who started first, Jim or Pam?
I think the most compelling thing we ever did on it was an alternate talking head ending to the client, where Jim told this beautiful story of his first day at work, where he went out to lunch with this person, and it was both his best first date and his worst first date because he found out that she was engaged. And to me, that means that she was there before him, and that was such a good talking head and such a good moment that got burned into my head. But apparently we previously had said the other way around. So I don't know. Because I'm going to say that Pam was there first.
Has there been any thought into outsourcing certain departments and having, say, Kelly compete with her cousin Kimmy from Calcutta?
It's funny, actually, that it brings up something that I wish BJ was here or Paul were here, which is that when you're a writer-performer on the show, we all work in the annex. And there's a period last year where we did this trick of a very funny story move, which is that Michael was very angry with Ryan and moves him to the annex. And that was because when we were in the annex, you don't see us, and so we can take off our costumes and go back to the writer's room. If you're asking if Greg is thinking about firing me, I think he has to answer that.
No. Never fire her.
Are we ever going to meet Michael's mother that lives in Dixon City? Aww. Why Dixon City?
Very possibly we'll meet her. We got an award once from the television critics, and Carol Burnett was there, and she was lovely, made a pitch to be Michael's mother. So I've been kind of reluctant to do that, though, because it feels like on a documentary to see a big famous actress like that would hurt it. So let's use this as a test case. So, all right, what do you think of celebrity guest stars in general? Well, how about Carol Burnett?
As Michael's mother, I don't think that makes sense.
All right.
Gene, I wanted to know if we're going to see the Vance Refrigeration guys anytime soon. I love the outtake when you're not delivering the bear when you guys go to hit on Pam in Valentine's Day, and I just wanted to know if we're going to see them anytime soon.
That's actually a question for Greg.
I don't know. I mean, these guys write each other into each other's scripts. I don't know if you recognize Justin Spitzer as the intern, though, from Fun Run.
He's got to be.
Say your line again. Say your line.
About the audience.
Justin, can you say your famous line?
So that's where your uterus went.
Some of them have been holding out. Jen Sled has been holding out for a better part.
Desperately want to be a shrew. So until that part gets offered.
Yeah, we would love to put more Leo and Gino in. The interesting thing about Leo and Gino, maybe it's not the interesting thing about Leo and Gino. A thing about Leo and Gino is that Lee plays Gino, and Gene plays Leo.
That was done to confuse our editor, Dave Rogers, who sometimes the lines of reality blur. When he's editing it, he calls BJ Ryan and Mindy Kelly, and it's unclear if he knows what's actually happening. He spends so much time editing. So.
He's constantly looking at a fake camera.
Yeah. Doing takes to a camera that's not there. Like, can you believe these people?
Since all of you have so much creative control in the episodes, then how much control do the directors have? You have people like Joss Whedon and J.J. Abrams. So I was wondering how much input they have, since you guys seem to have a lot of control in your episodes.
It makes a huge difference. We just watched Branch Wars, the one that's coming up. Joss Whedon directed that. It's coming up on Thursday. He's a really good comedy director, and a lot of what you'll see is that if there's a lot of deleted scenes, it's because the director was really good, and then it's really hard to get down to time. And sometimes, it's a stretch to get some deleted scenes. But no, the directors had a whole lot. But these guys, it all depends. It becomes like a little collaboration. Jen Salata and Harold Ramis were a great team, and Mike and Charles McDougall made a great team. And I don't know, these guys could talk more about what it's like to work with the individuals.
Well, it's also not just writers and directors. It's really writer, director, actor, and Randall, I would say. and everything is there's a lot of confabbing, and there's a lot of sort of discussion and sort of free-flowing ideas and stuff. But there are times when there's a director who's just straight up awesome that you just feel like you're worthless because they're doing everything that you would do before you can have a chance to know that you would do it. And the first episode that Joss Whedon directed, which is his business school, like that he did like an editor or director's cut of his episode, and it was like we watched it and I didn't know what you would do to change it, and it's partly because there's some directors who who love the show and know the visual style of the show, and so that's not a problem. You know, they never try to do things that we wouldn't ordinarily do, and they just set up really good shots and get really great performances out of people, and then that's when the job is really easy, is when the director is really good.
Also, Ken Kwapis has made a huge impact on the show because he directed the pilot, Diversity Day, and Casino Night, and Gay Witch Hunt, and a lot of our big episodes, Blues Cruise, and he kind of set up our way of interacting, where the cast is very protected and on the set all the time, and the people who usually service the cast, like makeup and hair and stuff like that, and can slow it down and remind everybody that they're in Hollywood, not in Scranton, is kept to a minimum, and they're always like off camera, and the cast have their own little compacts to do their makeup on their own and stuff, and he set up a lot of things that really helped us, in our process to make the show what it is.
My question is kind of a two-parter. The first part is, what is your favorite catchphrase that each of you have created yourself? And the second part is, who's responsible for I'm in love with Italian food? And can we see Pam reciprocate that?
Paul Lieberstein wrote, I believe, right? I'm in love with Italian food, the Jim Talking Head. Yeah, I believe that was Paul. Favorite catchphrase?
You know who's got a lot of catchphrases is Ed Helms. And
he's sitting there like the Queen of England.
I think a lot of times the catchphrases come from the actors, because like in the script you might say like shut up or something, and then when Steve turns it into shut it, and the way he says it kind of becomes a catchphrase, and then we start using it. But I think that they probably come up with most of them.
Who first pitched That's What She Said? Yeah!
What? Do you want to comment on that? No, that's just, that's a very common, I found like college and high school thing, that's what she said. And now that it's in all of our heads, I guarantee you there will be one or two before the question and answer session is over. Because it gets stuck in your head and then you see so many options to use it. That's what she said.
It's to the point now we're in the writer's room, we're just pitching and someone will say something and you'll be like, and you'll have a point that you have to make, but you can't stop, so you're like, well, I think Michael should, that's what she said, should try to really do this. It's like there's no joy in it anymore, even. It's like a tick that we have.
For Michael, too, it's a compulsion at this point. Sometimes he has to put an issue to rest with that's what she said before moving on.
Right.
Something he believes in.
Jen has that problem. I'm just going to say it, Jen. Jen can literally, you're trying to pitch in something, and you look in her eyes, and you know she's not thinking about anything, but just racing of how, which is funny, because it's a kind of Jen's like a classy lady, but that's a pretty low form of a joke.
It's my favorite. In fact, Mike and Paul at one point sat me down last year and you have to pick your moments where you do that's what she said. Just do them, keep doing them, do them a little less.
Yeah.
I like when Michael says yesh. Y-E-S-H. I didn't come up with it, I just think it's Yeppers.
I have a question from Mindy and BJ. I've noticed, especially last season, that the episodes that you write tend to center around your character a little bit more than otherwise. So I was wondering if you feel yourself biased a little bit towards developing your own character and getting to do what you feel like, because who knows their character better than you guys, right? So that, things that maybe other people might not come up with, and a little biased towards gearing the story around your character.
What part of Diwali did you think had to do with me or anything that I don't know? Or casting my actual parents in an episode? How dare you? How dare all of you? get to write an episode, sometimes I get asked this question, and it is fun to write. I mean, like, I'm a performer, and it is fun to write stuff for yourself, and if you can do it and it's good and it's organic, then I think in Diwali it was nice because Kelly was the catalyst for them being able to hang out with a bunch of Indian people and see, like, Michael doing Indian dancing and stuff. So it worked. When, like, for instance, in the episode you guys are going to watch a clip of, Kelly is not in the episode because it didn't really serve a purpose. I couldn't find a way that her character could have, like, a comment on what was going on or part of it, though I tried. I tried.
She pitched a narration for Kelly. It's going to be a dream that Kelly had.
Welcome to Scranton, everybody. Oh my God, you guys, it's Bridge Wars. Just like anything. Oh my God, just anything. But, like, everyone does it. Like, Mike is constantly like, how do we put Mose into the convention? Could Mose come along with Pam and Angela when they talk about Dwight? Like, he's always just trying to put himself in.
Come to work with that beard on. Sit at a desk, say, wouldn't it be funny if Mose did this, Mose did that.
And also, you guys know that, like, the team, Lee and Jean, were not sitting next to each other to appear like autonomous units, are also characters on the show. They play Leo and Gino, who work at Advanced Refrigeration. And
We talked about that.
Oh, you did? When I was in the bathroom? Some other time. Okay, sorry, I missed it. But, like, yeah, it's a temptation, but, oftentimes you are not in your own episode.
BJ, is the same thing for you?
Yeah, well, sometimes there's an episode, like, I believe Mike came up with the idea for the fire, and Greg assigned it to me just because it seemed like a good fit, Ryan started the fire, how about, the guy who plays Ryan writes the episode. And that was great, and, sometimes, though, I prefer it when someone else writes Ryan because it will push me more. Like, when I read Mike's draft for Dunder Mifflin Infinity, I wouldn't have thought, because as the actor plays Ryan, I'm always thinking, well, what would he do, what would he feel, how would it be real? And to see things that were more extreme than I would have guessed, it's not something I would have written, but it made it much more interesting. And it was fun to play. Well, how could he do this? How could he pull this up? How could this be fun? How could this be, how would it be justified? And that, I think, is a much more interesting contrast when someone else pushes the character and you have to figure out how to do it.
Let me say this, everybody realizes how important and unprecedented it is to have almost every writer from the best show on TV in Scranton right now, but I think we all agree that it's great that you're here, number one, but number two, it's also great that you are as funny as we wanted you to be right now. Thank you so much.